This is you. Retired. That's the word you use when you talk to yourself. Retired. Like you spent 30 years at a desk in an office building and now you tend a garden. Like you have a pension. Like you left on good terms. The Yakuza doesn't have good terms. The Yakuza has terms that benefit the Yakuza. And a man who walks away because his conscience finally got too loud is not a retirement. He is a loose end. You know this. You have always known this. You just decided the guilt was heavier than the fear. You were wrong. They are exactly the same weight. You were a debt collector for 19 years, not a soldier, not muscle. Something more useful and more dangerous than both. You were the man they sent when they wanted the money without the mess. You sat across kitchen tables and living room floors and back offices and restaurant booths. You opened folders. You read numbers. You watched people's faces change as the math became real. You were very good at finding the exact amount of pressure a person could take before they broke. Not too much, not too little. Precise. That precision was your entire value to them. And value to the Yakuza is the only protection that exists inside it. Nobody joins the Yakuza to collect debts. You joined because you were 22 and broke, and someone offered you a number that solved a problem. That number came with conditions. The conditions came with more conditions. And before you understood what was happening, you were inside something that doesn't have an outside. The first collection was terrifying. You sat across from a man twice your age and your hands wouldn't stop shaking. Your supervisor told you to put your hands under the table. You did. By the third collection, the shaking stopped. By the 10th, you stopped noticing the fear in other people's eyes. By the 50th, you stopped seeing them as people at all. You saw them as accounts. Open or closed, paying or not paying. That was the version of you that lasted 19 years. The guilt didn't arrive suddenly. That's what people don't understand about guilt. It doesn't announce itself. It accumulates. Like interest. The first time you noticed it was at a collection in a suburb on the north side of the city. A family home. A husband and wife at their own kitchen table looking at their own hands while you explained their options. Their daughter was in the next room. You could hear her through the wall doing homework. She was humming. You kept talking. You finished the collection. You got back in the car. You drove 4 blocks and pulled over. You sat there for 20 minutes, and you could not explain why. You went back the next day and told them you'd extended their timeline by 60 days. Your supervisor called it a mistake. He wasn't wrong. After that, you started noticing everything. The way a man's voice changed when he understood his shop was really at stake. The way a woman held her phone after you left like she was deciding who to call first. The way children looked at you from doorways. You had been doing this for 16 years before you started noticing, which means for 16 years you had been choosing not to. That was harder to sit with than anything else. Not what you did. How long it took you to care. The collections kept coming. But something had shifted underneath them. You were doing the same job with different hands. The precision was still there. But the silence inside it was gone. And without the silence, all you had was the noise. You told your superior you were done on a Tuesday morning. You sat in his office and you said you were finished. He smiled. That smile was the most frightening thing you had ever seen inside that organization. Not because it was threatening, because it was patient. He told you that you had served well. He told you that your contributions were valued. He said all of this in the tone of a man who was filing something away rather than closing it. You shook his hand. You walked out. You drove home. You sat in your car in your own parking space for a long time before you went inside. That was 8 months ago. This is what retirement looks like. A second-floor apartment in a district you never worked. A name on the lease that isn't the one you were known by. A mobile phone you replace every 6 weeks. A different route to the convenience store every single day. You cook your own meals. You do not eat at the same restaurant twice in a month. You pay cash for everything. You have no social media. You have no subscriptions. You have nothing that creates a pattern. Because patterns are how they find you. You know this because for 19 years, patterns were how you found other people. You used to sit across from men who thought they were invisible and explain to them calmly that you knew the name of the school their youngest child attended. You did that so many times you lost count. Now you are the man who has a youngest child somewhere. Metaphorically speaking, you are the man with something to lose, and you are trying very hard to make sure nobody can find what it is. The days are quiet. That is the thing nobody tells you about leaving a life like that. The quiet is loud in a different way. You wake up at 4 in the morning and you lie still and you listen to the building. You know the sound of every neighbor's routine. The woman next door runs water for exactly 11 minutes every morning. The couple at the end of the hall argue on Thursdays. 2 weeks ago, the Thursday argument didn't happen. You noticed immediately. You spent the rest of the day deciding whether that meant anything. It probably meant nothing. It probably meant they had a good week. But you are a man who spent 19 years finding the thing that was slightly wrong in every room he entered. You cannot turn that off. You notice everything. You check the door every time you come home. Not because something has changed. Because the day something changes, you want 2 seconds of warning. 2 seconds is enough. The guilt does not go away in retirement. You thought it might. You thought that leaving would be a kind of payment. That the act of walking away would settle something in the account? It didn't. If anything, it got louder. Because when you were inside the work filled every hour. Now the hours are empty. And the empty hours fill themselves with faces. The man whose restaurant closed 6 months after you visited it 3 times. The woman who sold her car. The college student who dropped out. The family in the suburb with the daughter humming through the wall. You don't know what happened to any of them after you were done with them. That is the part that sits heaviest. You closed their files and moved to the next one, and you never looked back. Because looking back was a liability. Now looking back is all you do. The first sign comes on a Friday. You are at the convenience store, 2 blocks from the apartment. Same store you use twice a week. You have been alternating between 2 stores on a rotating schedule to avoid pattern. This is the first time you have been to this particular store on a Friday. You pick up milk, you pick up rice, you get in line. The man in front of you is wearing a jacket you recognize, a specific cut, a specific tailor in the East District who makes that exact collar for one specific clientele. You have worn that jacket. You have sat across tables from men wearing that jacket. He pays for his things without turning around. He leaves. You stand at the register for 4 seconds longer than necessary. You pay. You leave through the side exit. You take 6 different turns getting home. You sit in your apartment and you tell yourself it means nothing. Jackets are not evidence. Coincidences exist. You tell yourself this for 3 hours. You are not entirely convinced. The second sign comes 9 days later. You come home and the 3 bolts on your door are exactly as you left them. You go inside, you make tea, you sit down. Then you notice the chair at your desk. You always leave it pushed in at a specific angle, not flush with the desk, at a slight angle to the right. Old habit. Something a supervisor taught you 20 years ago. Small things tell you whether a space has been touched. The chair is flush with the desk, not at an angle. Flush. You sit with your tea and you look at the chair for a long time. You think about 3 explanations. 1. You forgot your own habit for the first time in 20 years. 2. The landlord entered for a maintenance reason and didn't know to put the chair back at an angle. 3. Someone was in your apartment and they were good but not perfect. You do not sleep that night. You don't run. Running is what they expect. Running creates movement, and movement creates a trail, and a trail is everything they need. Instead, you go more still. You reduce everything. You stop the second convenience store entirely. You cook from whatever is already in the apartment. You do not vary your curtain position. You do not change your lights at unusual hours. You live like a photograph of a person living. Consistent. Unremarkable. On the 14th day after the chair, your neighbor stops you in the hall. She is a woman in her 60s who has lived in the building for 11 years. She has never stopped you in the hall before. She tells you a man came asking about you yesterday. She tells you he was polite. She tells you he said he was an old colleague trying to reconnect. She tells you she told him she didn't know much about you. She tells you he thanked her and left. She asks if everything is all right. You tell her yes. You tell her thank you. You go back inside your apartment. You stand in the center of the room. A polite man asking questions. That is exactly how you started every collection. Politely, just asking questions, just trying to reconnect. You sit on the mattress. You look at the window. You think about 19 years. You think about the accounts and the folders and the faces. You think about whether any of it was worth any of this. The Yakuza doesn't let people go. You knew that when you walked into that office on a Tuesday morning and said you were done. You knew it when his smile went patient instead of angry. You knew it the way you always knew things. Someone knocks on the door. 3 times. Measured. Not urgent. Patient. You look at the door. You look at the 3 bolts. All locked. You already know who it is before you stand up. The question isn't who. The question is what you do next.